I was 10 years old the first time I walked the ditch with my dad, boots sinking in the mud, the air thick with that sharp, wet scent of spring earth and cedar. He wore this beat-up denim cap, frayed at the brim, and he'd point at the water snaking through our trench, saying, "Elliot, this here's the lifeblood of our land, keeps the fields green, keeps us honest." That was our world, 15 acres in Willow Creek, Montana, passed down from my granddad, a scrappy piece of dirt that fed our family and half the neighbors since the 1950s. It wasn't much to look at dusty half the year, cracked under the summer sun, but when the snowmelt rolled down from the Bitterroot Hills, our hand-dug channels caught it, guided it, fed the barley, the alfalfa, even Old Man Carter's orchard across the way. We didn't call engineering back then. It was just what you did, like breathing. By the time I was 30, I'd gotten myself a civil engineering degree, worked a few years with the Army Corps, rebuilding flood channels in places like Guatemala and Iraq, seeing firsthand how fast things go sideways when water gets ignored. I came home when Dad passed heart, gave out during a late harvest, right by the main valve he'd installed himself. I took over the land, kept the water flowing, made it official with permits, easements, the whole 9 yards, all stamped and filed with the county. Everything was fine for a while, quiet fields, quiet life until the developers showed up. You know the type, slick hair, city shoes, calling our corner of nowhere prime real estate. Suddenly, Willow Creek wasn't just farmland anymore. It was the future site of Silver Pines Estates, complete with gated entries, fake stone fountains, and street names like Aspen Grove, despite there being no aspens for miles. The HOA board came with it, led by Diane Kessler, this woman with a smile sharper than a paper cut and a knack for making rules nobody asked for. To them, our irrigation ditch was an eyesore, a muddy scar ruining their view. I got invited to one of their meetings early on, held in this shiny new clubhouse they built right up against my fence line. Diane leaned across the table, her glasses glinting, and said, "Elliot, that open channel of yours sits a mosquito magnet, a liability. Can't you just pipe it underground? Make it prettier, prettier." I nearly choked. I laid out the maps, showed them how that ditch kept their fancy homes from flooding every spring, kept the farms alive in July. They nodded, smiled, didn't hear a word. Things got tense after that. Notices started showing up on my gate. Your fence violates aesthetic standards. Farm equipment noise is disrupting community peace. Standing water detected potential health hazard. I ignored them, kept my easements tight, my valves checked. But then one morning, I heard the growl of heavy machinery. 2 bulldozers tearing into my backfield like they owned it. I ran out, waving like a madman, got the driver, a kid barely out of high school toe, shut it down. "Orders from Silver Pines," he said, shrugging. "They're leveling it for a new cul-de-sac." My blood went cold. I pointed to the survey marker, a steel rod I'd driven into the ground myself, and said, "This is my land, kid. You're trespassing on a protected easement." He just pointed me to the HOA office. I got on the phone, sheriff, city hall, county planner. Nobody wanted to touch it. Civil matter, they said. Then I dug into their permits and found the lie. They'd used a doctored map, one that erased my ditch entirely, claiming the land was just empty dirt. They didn't just bury my trench. They buried the truth under a fake survey and a concrete slab. I stood there that evening, watching their machines rip up pipes my dad had laid in '79, pipes with our names scratched into the brass. The air smelled wrong diesel, dust, betrayal. I didn't cry, but I held one of those busted valves, heavy as memory, and knew this wasn't over. The fallout came fast. That spring, the rains hit, and without the ditch, the water had nowhere to go. It pooled in their perfect little park, turned their cul-de-sacs into swamps. Maple Lane looked like a river, kids' toys floating in the muck. Diane sent out frantic emails. Remain calm. Sandbags at the clubhouse. But the farmers felled it to me, barley withered. Carter's orchard went dry. Wells across the county started coughing dust. People started talking, not just grumbling but connecting dots. I met with them at the old fire station on Route 12, a crumbling shed with a coffee pot and folding chairs. I showed them drone footage my buddy Sam, a retired surveyor, had shot water backing up where my ditch used to be, choking the land. Old Lady Carter stood up, voice like gravel, and said, "They stole our water, Elliot. What are we going to do?" I didn't have an answer yet, but I was working on it. I filed a cease and desist, sent the footage to the local paper, even pulled an old FEMA grant from '96 that protected our ditch as critical infrastructure. Then I found the real kicker. My family still held the mineral and water rights under the land, something Dad locked in when he split the property decades ago. That meant every house Silver Pines built was sitting on a foundation they didn't legally control. I called my friend Lena, a lawyer with the state's environmental office, and she laughed hard. "Elliot, they're screwed. This is class action territory." The HOA didn't back down, they doubled down. Diane's team sent me a certified letter accusing me of defamation, threatening to sue for spreading false claims about their development. They even put out a newsletter, this glossy thing called the Silver Pines Press, with a cartoon of me in overalls, waving a shovel like some unhinged hermit, captioned, "Elliot's Ditch of Doom." Online, they got nastier fake accounts call me a water hoarder, said I was sabotaging progress for attention. At the grocery store, a guy in a polo shirt made a show of stepping around me, muttering, "There's the ditch guy." It stung, not gonna lie, but it also lit a fire. Then the Real flood came. 4 days of rain, steady, unrelenting. By day 3, Silver Pines was underwater, basements flooded, HVAC units fried, families bailing out their kitchens with buckets. I stood on my porch, watching Diane speed by in her SUV, phone to her ear, tires spraying mud. The news choppers showed up, circling like hawks, and the headlines started rolling. Silver Pines sinks in stormwater fiasco. I didn't cheer. It wasn't about winning, it was about the land screaming what I've been saying all along. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A guy named Tom, the HOA's maintenance lead, showed up at my door one night, soaked to the bone, holding a folder. "I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "They told me the ditch was dead, that you were exaggerating. But my kids' rooms got mold now, Elliot. I can't stay quiet." He handed me work orders, photos of Diane signing off on the demolition, proof they'd ignored flood complaints for months to keep sales moving. Tom wasn't a hero, was just a dad who'd had enough. The trial was quick but brutal. Lena laid it all out. The mineral rights, the doctored maps, Tom's testimony. I took the stand, didn't need notes, just told the story Dad's hands bleeding from digging, the way the ditch saved Carter's orchard in '98, how it wasn't just pipes but a promise to the land. Diane's lawyers tried to paint me as a crank, said the ditch was obsolete, that the floods were an act of God. But the jury saw the photos. Concrete clogging drainage grates, water pooling where my ditch used to flow. They deliberated 3 hours. When the foreman stood, the room held its breath. "We fine for the plaintiff, Elliot Mason, on all counts." The judge ordered the trench restored, fined the HOA for falsifying records, and froze their development. Diane's face went white as the gavel dropped. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I just said, "This isn't about me. It's about letting the land breathe." A week later, the first excavator rolled in. Lot 42, their prize model home, came down in a cloud of dust. I watched from the county line, not smiling, just present. By spring, the trench was flowing again, water gliding through the old curves like it remembered the way. Diane issued an apology at a press conference, looking small without her pearls, admitting they'd ignored warnings, cut corners. She left town soon after. The community started healing farmers, donated to a flood relief fund. Even some Silver Pines folks chipped in. A teacher named Sarah invited me to talk to her class, and I brought a piece of the original pipe, let the kids hold it. One boy, gap-toothed and curious, asked if it was magic. Nah, I said, it's just memory. The barley came back that fall, green and stubborn, like the town itself. I walk the ditch at night sometimes, no flashlight, just the sound of water moving, steady, alive. I think about Dad, about how he'd smell rain in the wind, about how he'd grin knowing we held the line. But here's the thing, justice isn't a gavel or a headline. It's the quiet when the water flows right again. It's the kid who'll grow up knowing the land matters. And it's the question I can't shake. What happens when people forget that everything water, dirt, truth has a memory that fights to be heard? So, tell me in the comments, have you ever fought for something everyone else forgot? What's worth standing up for in your town? Share your story. I am listening.